spend a lot of time talking about children and cars, and that's a big hazard and the reason why a lot of us are here. But we have other vulnerable populations, and we lose more of our populations beyond children to heat. And a lot of these deaths are preventable. And that's why we really want to get that message out there and talk about some of these preventable deaths that we can deal with. You know, we're dealing with, it's no surprise, extreme heat right now. It's been very hot. We're looking at our hottest June on record for Houston. The way we're going, we're going to set that by the end of the week. That will break the record from 2011, which was a bad summer, those around that remember that. But it's not just the extreme heat that we have to deal with. So our climate is hot. We're naturally, normally have dangerous heat around here in the summertime. So people necessarily don't appreciate what that can bring. But we have normal highs this time of year of 92. Later in the summer, our normals are in the mid-90s. So we're just normally hot. So we really want people to be aware of the heat, but also to be safe and fair with the assessment of themselves and what their capabilities of. Talking about preventable deaths, it's people getting out and doing things in the heat, thinking, well, I just have to get this done, and they're not really recognizing the heat that they're going to be under, not recognizing, appreciating, what their capabilities really are. So a message is check on yourself, but also check on your neighbors. Check on pets. Animals also suffer a lot in the heat as people don't appreciate what we put our pets through. So, check the back seat. I think that's going to be a big message coming out of this, going back to children. Find ways to help. A lot of our cars don't need a key to turn. You just get in and push the start button. Put that key in the back seat. You can't lock the car without it. Put your purse, put something in the back seat with your child or your pet as a reminder. Oh yes, they're back there. I need to check on them. So I appreciate you all coming out. Again, this is a very important topic and something we don't talk about enough.
Thank you, Jeff. Our second speaker this morning is Maggie Gunnels, Region 6 Administrator with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Maggie, take over.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here today. We're really here to talk about a tragedy that is preventable, and I think that's an important thing to remember and something that we can do about, and that's children dying in hot cars, either from being left alone in the car or having problems accessing the cars. And we hear from our passionate safety leaders here today, and I'd just like to thank you all for being here and sharing this important information today. And you may have also seen out on our highways that we have message boards from our colleagues at the Texas Department of Transportation that are reminding drivers, passengers, everyone to don't leave kids in hot cars. We want to remind you all that it is Texas, but it is also every state in the United States that faces the possibility of this tragedy, and we really all need to work together to create awareness and strategies to keep kids out of hot cars. And we're going to hear from our colleagues who have had real-world experience keeping Texas children safe, and will show us how this phenomenon, this very sad phenomenon of hot cars, can be both deadly and tragic. So we really have to remain vigilant to these dangers. There are three main scenarios in which heat stroke in cars with kids occurs. Children can be forgotten in vehicles by parents or caregivers. They gain access to unlocked vehicles and become trapped inside, or they're knowingly left in vehicles by parents or caregivers. And one of the biggest risk factors for all of this is a change in routine. And many deaths have happened because a morning routine has been changed. And actually, many deaths have happened when children are being taken to either a caregiver, such as child care, or to schools. So we know this has and likely will happen, and so we must remain vigilant. So there are a few tips that we all need to follow, and you'll hear echoed throughout today. When you're driving with your child, remember to always look before you lock. Make sure before your child has been dropped off at daycare, make sure they're not left behind in the car seat, and keep an item in the back, such as a teddy bear, or perhaps something that you have personally that can be a visual cue to you when your child is in the car. No one really thinks this can happen to them, but we know it does. Lock your car in the driveway or the garage. Never leave your car, even if you think you'll only be for a minute, with a child in the car. Rolling down the window may seem to help, but it really doesn't. It doesn't help at all. And heat stroke can happen even on a relatively cool day. And of course, if you see a child in the car, locked inside a car, call 911 immediately. Take action, call immediately, and get help. So we marked May 1st as the beginning of a national heat stroke awareness campaign to spread this life-saving message, and we hope that you will continue to do that. This campaign runs from April through September, which are the hottest months traditionally of the year. And just know that these tragic events are preventable. And as of today, 5 children have been killed across the United States in 2022, 1 in Georgia, 1 in Memphis, Tennessee, as well as in Texas, as we all know here today. There were 23 known deaths from what is termed as pediatric vehicular heat stroke in the United States during 2021, including 2 in Texas. There were 25 known pediatric vehicular heat stroke deaths in 2020, and 5 of those occurred in Texas. So please, keep in mind, you have to look before you lock, and remember to always look before you lock. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And our final speaker this morning is Dr. Anthony Arredondo with Texas Children's Hospital.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. And so my role here this morning is to talk about our number one priority, which is our kids, especially the ones we see in the emergency department. I work at the ER at Texas Children's Hospital. And so with heat-related illnesses in particular, there's a range of disease that overlaps to some degree. And so starting off with the most mild illness, you could see heat cramps. And so young infants, especially ones that have been in the hot sun for a long period of time, that may be more challenging because they may not be able to tell you that they're in pain. And so they may be fussy, they may be crying. And then with some degree of dehydration, then it progresses more to heat exhaustion. And with heat exhaustion in particular, you're more dehydrated, more thirsty. You can also have other symptoms such as vomiting, headache. You can even have an elevated body temperature up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. And then leading to the most severe disease process is heat stroke. And so this is a life-threatening emergency. The big difference here is that there tends to be a change in mental status. So to the point where they have worsening headache, but they can be combative, they can be confused, they could even have seizures, up to the point where they could even have other organ damage as well, affecting the heart, the liver, the kidneys, etc. You could have an elevated body temperature up to 104 or higher degrees Fahrenheit, but they're so dehydrated to the point where they can't sweat anymore. And so they'll come in very hot, very flushed, very red with their skin in particular. And so this is a very important where we can try to take measures to help prevent this. And there are some ways to do so, and I know you've already heard today, this morning, about infants in cars in particular, but even those kids that are outside for an extended period of time, if you have to be around in the hot sun or play outside during the hottest part of the day, so anywhere from 2 to 4 p.m., it's very, very important to have a plan and set in mind to be prepared for that situation. So having adequate water, drinking frequently to stay hydrated, trying to take breaks, especially in sports and athletics. It's incumbent not on the parents only, but also on the trainers, the coaches as well, to help these kids stay hydrated as well so they don't get dehydrated. Looking for shade, taking breaks, and then lastly, talking about infants in vehicles or even kids in vehicles, not just leaving them alone, especially with a change in routine, but also having limited access to cars on their own to be able to get in, whether it's in the garage or whether it's outside, because sometimes they may not be able to get out on their own. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Arredondo, for that. Appreciate it, and to all of our speakers. I also want to recognize the Harris County Sheriff's Office and our partners at the Texas Department of Transportation who are here standing alongside us today as well. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. So at this time, our speakers will be happy to answer questions, and then we'll hold a heat demonstration display outside our main entrance. So if you have questions, the reporters that are here on site, please feel welcome to ask.
Do you have anybody in Spanish that can give us a comment?
Certainly.
I'll just repeat it in Spanish. Hi. Hola, mi nombre es Dr. Arredondo. Soy uno de los doctores en la emergencia. Entonces, estoy aquí para ayudar de aumentar el conocimiento de enfermedades por el calor y también de hablar qué miramos en los niños pequeños. Entonces, en los niños hay varias condiciones y es un espectro. Entonces, comience con calambres por el calor, donde uno puede tener dolor a los músculos, pero también deshidratados, pero también progrese a agotamiento por el calor. Entonces son más deshidratados, pueden tener vómitos, pueden tener dolor de cabeza, una temperatura elevada hasta 102. Y lo más peor de estas enfermedades se llama en inglés heat stroke, y es un daño al cerebro, no es un infarto, pero sí es un daño al cerebro, donde uno puede tener una temperatura más elevada de 104 grados Fahrenheit o más alta, pero están tan deshidratados donde ya no pueden sudar, entonces su piel es bien rojo, bien seca, bien caluroso. Pero la gran diferencia con el daño al cerebro es un cambio de suplementación, donde pueden estar combativos, confundidos, pueden tener más peor dolor de cabeza, aún pueden tener convulsiones. Pero la gran cosa es también pueden tener daño a diferentes órganos. Entonces es muy, muy importante de estar informados, atentos de esta situación y de tomar medidas para prevenir estas situaciones. Entonces, cosas que pueden hacer es, si van a estar afuera en el calor durante el parte más caliente del día, 2 a 4 p.m., es muy importante de tener un plan para tener suficiente agua, para tomar líquidos frecuentemente, para mantener hidratados. Buscar sombra, tomar descansos, aún bien importante en los niños o en la juventud, especialmente en los atléticos. Entonces es en la responsabilidad de los padres, pero no también los padres, pero los entrenadores también. Entonces, estas son unas medidas que pueden hacer, y quiero hablar también de un tema importante, son los niños pequeños en los vehículos abandonados. Entonces es muy importante, si están cambiando de su rutina, de ir a un diferente destino, o si están regresando al trabajo o cualquier cosa, es muy importante de tener un plan. Entonces, de dejar su bolsa, su teléfono, algo atrás para recordarse de fijar ahí atrás que no hay un niño allí solo en el carro, y también tratar de limitar el acceso a los vehículos, aún en el garaje o afuera de la casa, para que un niño no se pueda entrar y quedar allí solo. Gracias.
Doctor Arredondo, ¿qué tan rápido puede ocurrir esto de golpe de calor y todos estos problemas que vienen por estar expuestos al calor?
Sí, sí, bien rápido, aún especialmente en el carro, allí especialmente se puede ocurrir más rápido, especialmente en los primeros 15 minutos, la temperatura puede elevar bien rápido y bien significante. Afuera, si no toma breaks o busca sombra o algo así, también se puede ocurrir más rápido también.
I have the same question in English.
Yeah.
How long the time limit and how quickly this can happen?
Yeah, so in the car in particular, that's where it could rise really fast and very significantly. We have a demonstration here today that we're going to show you guys, just sitting out there with a thermometer, how fast the temperature can rise. And so that's very important with kids in the car in particular, but also outside, if you're not taking breaks or seeking shade, that can also elevate your body temperature pretty fast as well.
I have a question for Lieutenant Collier.
Thank you.
You may have covered the child death yesterday, and you probably covered more. From a law enforcement standpoint, speak to our viewers about the importance of securing your kids.
Well, today's biggest takeaway is, like it's already stated, look before you lock, hydrate, and we tell folks to protect their valuables in the car. Do a quick scan of what's in the front seat and the back seat so thieves can't steal your items, but do a quick scan for your loved ones. Not only that, if your child is being dropped off at a daycare, call your spouse, partner, whomever, and ask, how was Nia when you dropped her off, or how was Sydney off to daycare? Well, how was their reaction? That conversation stimulates the brain to know, wow, I didn't drop them off, or she was okay. But some people may take offense to it, but I would prefer being offensive than leaving a child in a car to be injured. This is a serious thing, but it's pretty basic, but it's like stated earlier, we get so complacent and tied up with life. We have to be mindful of what's important. It's the basic things. It's taking care of our kids. Just a quick scan, looking in the back seat is very simple, but we take it for granted. And making a phone call, how is Johnny? Did he get off to daycare well? Did you drop him off? Did you give him his lunch? Or whatever. Just make conversation. That conversation could save a child's life.
Can you be charged with a crime?
Absolutely. You can be charged with a crime of leaving a child unattended in the car. That's a citation, up to negligent homicide.
And state your name for the record, sir.
Lieutenant Cedric Collier, C-E-D-R-I-C-K, Collier, C-O-L-L-I-E-R.
I have a question for Mr. Evans. And this could also go to Dr. Arnold. But, so you mentioned earlier that that we've seen record temperatures this year. How does that sort of complicate or complement how these health issues get worse?
Well, I think because we're such a hot climate, people get a little complacent with it, and so when we get record heat and we're much hotter, they don't necessarily recognize that we're 10 degrees hotter than we normally are. So those type of things I think can play into it. Obviously, the hotter the environment, the hotter the car is going to get rapidly, and outside of the kids, having people outside, people working in the yard doing chores, that it's just hotter than it should be in June. So people don't necessarily recognize that, and they put themselves in a situation which could be a little bit dangerous for them.
I also wanted to follow up with
Sure.
and ask, even for people who are, trying to stay indoors during the hotter parts of the day, what are some things that they can do to keep their homes, safe and in condition?
I mean, obviously, the condition of your home, so that, making sure your air conditioners have been checked. Usually before summer, you want to make sure someone comes out, checks your system, make sure that it's in good shape. So anything like that, any sort of shade that you can provide. But not only for you, check on your neighbors, check on other people in your community that may not have air conditioning. Things of that nature. So, making sure we have that open. They do open heat shelters. So when we have these really hot temperatures, the communities will open shelters. So sometimes it's simple as someone needing a ride. So, making yourself available to check on that. But otherwise, just making sure your cooling systems are adequate, especially getting into the hottest part of the summer.
Is there anyone available that can speak about the cooling centers that are available in the area and how Metro's giving free rides to them, and for anybody that can't get to AC? Anybody have any info on that?
I believe so, not today. We can try to follow up with you, though, for sure.
I have a question too. Are there any regulations in place for the public school systems for athletics, having a certain amount of time allocated for rest between practices or games? And if anything fatal were to happen in that scenario, whose hands does that fall on the left, possibly not realizing those symptoms?
Yeah, I wouldn't know that directly. I know that a lot of states do have certain thresholds of wet bulb zero temperature or heat indexes where they do start limiting activities and sometimes shutting them down. I'm not aware of what the state of Texas is. I could look that up for you and get back with you, Karen.
No regulations that within public schools.
There are regulations.
Oh, they
I just
are?
don't know them.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there are regulations as far as outside activities versus indoor activities.
Okay, great. So we invite you all to stick around for a few minutes. We're going to step outside to view a heat demonstration in a vehicle and talk with passenger safety technicians about heat stroke prevention. So thank you for being here today, and if you would hang around for a few minutes, we're going to step right outside of TranStar's main entrance. Thanks, everybody, and thank you to the speakers.